Good morning, everybody. Washington County Executive and, as of yesterday, candidate for Wisconsin Governor Josh Schoemann is our very special guest today, Monday, May 5th, 2025. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you are watching DrydenWire Live. Hey, quick programming note. Tomorrow morning, Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for our weekly Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. It'll be our 240th show. But you don't want to miss this one, as we will be discussing a major career change for Fitzy after 17 years of sheriff. And on Thursday, May 8th, 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany will be joining me for a live chat, as he always does on the second Thursday of every month. But today, we welcome back to the show Washington County Executive, who yesterday launched his campaign for Wisconsin Governor Josh Schoemann. Josh, good morning, brother. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me back. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Oh, is that today?
It's the 5th of May.
I don't know. What is that even? I don't even know what that is.
I think Mexican Independence Day.
Oh, that's kind of a big deal. Yeah, I didn't know. Hey, so what did you do this
we've
weekend?
Turned it into a margarita day.
I think so. What did you do this weekend?
Not much. Just hung out, spent some time with the family. 400 of my closest friends.
Yeah, so that's kind of a big deal. Running for governor. What?
Yes. Yeah. It was actually, yesterday was phenomenal. Other than May the 4th be with you, it was also.
I was actually wondering, are you a nerd geek? Which, by the way, nerds and geeks rule the world, and I consider myself one as well. I'm like, May 4th. I wonder if that's tied in. I doubt it, but maybe. It'd be a great story if it was true.
Yeah, well, I mean, we did pick the 4th. No, it was a great day. It was wonderful. We had a lot of fun. Like I said, about 400 people came to a barn just down the road from my farm in the town of Trenton, which is in Washington County, the first county north, the first taste of freedom from leaving Milwaukee County. And it was a great day for Wisconsin.
Was it?
Yeah.
I mean,
yes,
so
yes.
Well, we have a lot to unpack here. Hold on a second. I got to turn this phone off. So obviously the $64,000 question, why? Why, Governor? Put it this way. Why should we hire you?
That's a perfect question, but I think a little more than 64,000, maybe 30 million. No. Listen, I think really important for our state is to start looking forward to the next 20 years, not 2025, but more like 2045 and 2050. I think we've got a governor right now who's kind of a status quo, career politicians who've been more focused on, frankly, themselves and the number of followers they have on social media than on you. And that isn't the kind of county executive I've been, is focused on the people, putting power back in the hands of people. That's exactly what we've done in Washington County and in West Bend, and that's what we're going to take to Madison.
Career politician.
Yeah.
When you say that, so we've had a lot of candidates that have come on the show and talked, and it seems to be one of those things, if they don't have a lot of history in politics and their opponent does, that's usually what they say. I'm not a career politician. And then we have the career politician that's on and says, well, I'm experienced. So is that just one of those, career politician, it's just kind of the buzzword, that's kind of what you say? Or are you genuinely like, no, I don't think he's in it for the right reasons?
Well, I mean, listen, I grew up as a Rush Limbaugh baby, a Reagan baby. My dad would drive around as a Lutheran minister going to shut-in calls, and I'd be listening to Rush Limbaugh on the radio. All the values, conservative values that they talked about, smaller government and lower taxes and all of those things, I believed in, and I still believe in. And when I came to the county and became county executive in particular, I've actually followed through on those things. I didn't realize most conservative politicians run on those things to get elected, and then too often don't actually effectuate them. So, I think that is mostly my criticism. Is we've gotten a lot of promises for a long time, most of my life, quite frankly, for smaller government and lower taxes, and not a lot of delivery. A lot of talk, a lot of sternly worded letters and social media posts, but not a lot of delivery. If you look at what I've done in Washington County, in the 12 years I've been in there, and the 5, particularly as county executive, we've reduced the size of government in every metric, and not in a slash and burn kind of way. I think you've got to be thoughtful. You got to be strategic about what that cutting looks like. I'd rely on business principles, running government a little bit more like a business. Jim Collins' hedgehog theory, you get small and focused, good at really just a few things. For us, those things are public safety, mental health services, roads, economic development, and then making sure you're running government the best and most effective way you possibly can. I think my criticism largely is just we've heard from both sides of the aisle. Remember, when we were kids, Bill Clinton was saying the era of big government is over. Does anybody think today the era of big government is over, whether it's in Madison or in Washington? So we've been hearing these promises for years and years and years, most of my life. I've actually delivered on those promises, and that's what I'm going to bring to Madison.
And for people, so you were on the show with us back in December, and that's when we went through, it was like an hour-long show. We went through a lot of your life and what you do right now. So I kind of want to regurgitate all of that. People should just go to our YouTube channel at DrydenWire and just search your name. They can go back and listen to that. But I want to go back to what you said, that people run on certain things. Both sides, I don't know if you said that, but I think that's probably what you meant as well, right? Republicans, Democrats, okay. They run on certain things, and then when they get there, they kind of go to the middle ground, right? They kind of don't stick to that. Why do you think that is?
Oh, it's hard work. I mean, that's the bottom line. It's very difficult, especially when you have split government, to actually get things done. And one of the things I'm very most frustrated about in Madison is it's not just that it's hard and those conversations are difficult. We're not even having the conversations, and that's a problem. The fact that people aren't even talking to each other. I mean, that is, one of the number one rules of being a leader is do what you say you're going to do. I think it's what has people most shocked about Donald Trump. He ran on, fixing illegal immigration. He ran on tariffs, and he ran on the concept of DOGE. Now he's actually doing it, and people don't know what to do. Oh my gosh, a politician who actually does what he says he's going to do, and then is clearly communicative of what his intentions are and how it's going to be effectuated. When we don't have the governor and legislative leadership even communicating with each other, and when they do, it's like headline news. I mean, that's embarrassing, and it's just not Wisconsin. People aren't like that. We're neighbors. You have to work together. When I was president of the Wisconsin County Executives and Administrators Association, you think I had the luxury of just, I'm not going to talk to David Crowley. Like I can't afford the 5 minutes to discuss with him what things are like. He's a Milwaukee County executive, or I'm just going to ignore some of the other counties that aren't. Washington County is very red. That might be maybe more purple or more blue. I mean, we have to talk to each other. Even when you have a dispute with your neighbor, you want it resolved. You talk to the person. Don't call the cops. So I think that's a big part of what the challenge here in Wisconsin is. And I'm a big believer in bringing folks together. It's what I've done in Washington County for some of our most pressing issues. Bring neighbors together to have conversations about how do we not how do we fix blame, but how do we fix the damn problem?
So running for governor, if you were the governor, I mean, what you're discussing is a lot of the legislature stuff. They're not actually the ones who. So how do you do that? How do you get them all at the same? You're the new kid in the room, right? And you look like you're 19. And they're going, who's this kid telling us what to do? We got to all sit down and talk. What? Shut up. Get out of here. We know what we're doing. Like, can you get a Voss and LeMahieu with the Democratic Party? Can you actually get that done? How do you do that?
Yeah, for sure. Now, I'm quite positive they're going to be making jokes about the new kid. That's going to be the theme for the next several months.
That's
I'm
awesome.
sure. Yeah. But I'm just going to correct you quickly. When I'm governor, it really is. It's about leadership, right? Again, we have to cast a shared vision for this state, and over the course of the next 18 months, my goal is to talk to people where they are at. I want to be sitting at kitchen tables and patios and pancake breakfasts and every place I can possibly get, local diners, and just hear from folks what it is that they they want from this state for the next 20 years. Not the status quo, not how things used to work in 1975 or 1995, but what it's going to look like for the next 20, 40, 50 years here in Wisconsin. We've got to have a place where our kids want to come back. We have to have a place where retirees can actually afford to be here. I visit my folks. They have a trailer down in Florida along the Gulf Coast. And when I'm down there, there's a bunch of Wisconsin folks, the little pink houses down in that neck of the woods. And there's so many people who are from Wisconsin, and they love to say, I'm from Wisconsin. I really feel like we've got to have Wisconsin where people are proud to be, not just be from.
Have you already, I'm sure you and Ben Vocal, I know he's on your team. He's I think the world of him. What you're talking about going out and sitting down at people's dining room tables and getting to hear from them. You just announced yesterday, so this is going to be, and we should probably get into why you announced now. What are the advantages, disadvantages, kind of the strategy behind that. But have you already started anticipating and kind of working through what kind of questions am I anticipating getting? And what is our answer on those? Like, what do you think, like 3 or 4, we know we're going to this. And sometimes, let's face it, those aren't necessarily the pressing issues. They're like the media questions. It's the things that you see in the news, whether it's abortion and marijuana, which are very, very important issues for a lot of people. I totally get it. What questions are you anticipating getting asked?
Yeah, the first one I usually get asked is, why do you think Tony Evers has got to go? We've had that frequently. And I think the answer is pretty simple. He's not a leader. Leaders bring people together. So here's a really good illustration. So this last state budget, 2 years ago, the governor and legislative leadership miraculously are talking to each other to get that budget done. It's a fantastic, wonderful thing. And they negotiate the back and forth between things like shared revenue and school funding. Everybody knows both of those were monumentous changes. And then what does the governor decide to do? Rather than living up to what he said he would do, number one rule in leadership, I learned that in Baghdad when I was there in 2003. Instead, he line item vetoes 2024 to 2025, takes out the dash and makes it 24-25, right? A 400-year permanent tax increase. Now, do you think anybody in the state of Wisconsin, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, was...
And he's gone. You there?
I still got you?
Oh, yeah, there we are. Got you. Uh-oh. Oh, boy. Maybe there's a button on your earbud there. You muted it, maybe. I don't know. Okay. Well, while we're waiting, this will be a good question. Angie Sapek, former Representative Angie Sapek. Good morning, fellas. Quick 2-part question. Do you anticipate... No, I'm not singing right now. Do you anticipate a primary, and what support networks got behind you to encourage you to announce your candidacy so early on? Are you there? Oh, I think I hear you.
Yes, I'm back. Sorry. How's that?
Terrible.
No good? Terrible. Uh-oh. It probably broke.
Oh, hold on. I think we're good. I think we had it.
How about now?
Yeah, oh, perfect. There we go. Now we're back. And we're back. Yeah, live shows. What are you going to do?
Nature of the beast.
All right. Yeah, so here's a question from Representative Angie Sapek. Do you anticipate a primary? Let's just start there. Do you anticipate a primary? Or does it matter to you who is going to be? I've heard like Bill Barron. I don't know anything about him. Tom Tiffany, I know, is considering it. Don't know if he's going to or not. Eric Hovde, I've heard, but I kind of don't think so, but whatever. Does it matter to you who's going to be your primary opponent at all?
No, it doesn't. Look, I think right now, if you look across the state, there's pretty intense back and forth between different factions of the conservative side. You're certainly seeing it on the liberal side as well. we have to have those discussions, and sometimes they're very loud discussions. It doesn't matter to me who jumps in on the primary. I really want to be focused on the people. That's what I've done in Washington County. And at a county level, you have the luxury of literally having the time and the space to go door to door and talk to people. It's not going to be quite the same way this time around. So we've started to assemble a grassroots committee that we'll announce in the next week or so. And we've got folks from all over the state of Wisconsin. And the goal really is to try to meet, a dozen people, 2 dozen people. To answer your question that we were talking about before my earpod fell out, I think it really comes down to, I want to hear directly from folks what it is that they want the state to be. It's our state collectively. You can't have a shared vision unless it's us together. Otherwise, it's just you. We've already got a governor that line item veto that I talked about before. That's a contradiction in terms. There's no one in the legislature, I'm quite sure, on either side that wanted that. Those are the people's elected representatives, and I'm quite certain there are no Wisconsin residents who are saying, you know what I really want? I want to have a 400-year permanent tax increase with no plan for how to actually improve our schools for our kids. So, I think it's going to take being everywhere in the state. That is absolutely 100% my goal, to get to all four corners of the state and be there as frequently as I can. And again, meet people where they're at and hear from them what they want the state to be for the next 20 years, the next 40 years.
So when you become governor, right?
There you go. Now you're talking.
Are you going to give direction to the legislature to say, I want something in front of me to sign that is going to remove the line item veto for governors for the governor in Wisconsin? Are you going to advocate for that?
I'm absolutely going to advocate for some change to veto authority in general. I mean, the specifics will be what, where the rubber hits the road and what the negotiation looks like. But I'm a county executive now. I have the same veto authority as the governor. But here's what's different about how I have led in Washington County and how what we've seen happen in Madison. Before we even get to the potential of a veto, I am constantly talking to our legislature, which is the county board, our county board chair. If I have county board supervisors that have issues with, what some of the legislation looks like, we're in constant conversation. And it really doesn't make any difference, kind of where they're at on the political spectrum, although in Washington County, it's mostly conservative. But still, nonetheless, if they have issues, I know what those issues are. If I have issues, they know what my concerns are. That kind of communication has to happen in real time, ahead of time. And then once you commit to something, the worst thing you can do for your credibility is to go back on what you said, because then how do people trust you moving forward? I kind of think that's where we're at in Wisconsin right now. People are frustrated. There was just a letter to the editor in the Wisconsin State Journal from a woman who identified as a Democrat and mentioned how terrible she thinks it is. And she's right. I mean, what's to stop some future conservative governor from making an equally bad veto? So yeah, I think there's going to have to be some reform. We'll negotiate on that, but we will be talking to each other about what that looks like and what's best for the people of Wisconsin. Not the politicians.
So you're going to go around over the next year or so having these conversations. Is that to get your idea of what you want, what your vision is? Do you not have one yet? Or is it's a work in progress, but I want to wait to see what people are telling me?
Well, my vision is for a state where our kids want to be, our retirees want to be, not just be from. That's a big part of it. But I think if you look back over the course of the history of the state, especially like the last 100, 150 years, our best governors have been the ones that try to make government closest to the people possible, where decisions are made and initiated by the people. Not some edict from on high or benevolent leader who has all of the answers. There is no person that's got all of the answers. We're not in the heavenly kingdom, we're in the earthly kingdom. So I think it's really, really important to listen more and speak less. And when you're ready to speak, it's informed based on what the people want. Wisconsin has a long tradition of that. Some of our most famous Republicans have been very, very intentional about putting people first. I want to be exactly that kind of governor because this is our state, not just my state.
What are you going to do when you run into a situation where this is what the state wants, this is what the people want, and that goes against what I personally, as in you, believe in. And again, it could be any number of topics. But hey, if this is what everybody wants, how are you anticipating handling those situations?
Well, I mean, listen, referendums are a really good example, right? We don't do a referendum for every public policy issue that's out there. We do them for the biggest ones. So, people voting in November of 2026 is going to be a major referendum. It's going to be informing whose values and what do they want this state to look like. I think there's always going to be things that we disagree upon, especially in this state. I mean, usually it comes down to 100,000 votes or less, right? So I think I need to be listening to folks, try to understand where they're coming from, and then live my conservative principles and values and let that drive forward how we lead this state. In the end, President Reagan said something to the effect of, freedom isn't passed through the blood veins from generation to generation. It has to be fought for, protected, and then passed on so the next generation can do the same thing. I'm going to do exactly that. It's a different way of fighting. I'm not a New York brawler like President Trump. I'm the son of a Lutheran minister and Wisconsin nice. But it's fighting nonetheless, and I will fight for the people and fight for the things I believe in.
Yeah, whatever. I reason number 164 I could never run for like a position like governor, because I'm not listening to anybody. No, you're a bunch of idiots, and I'm going to do what I think is right. And if you don't like it, vote for somebody else. I don't care. Hey, we have a question here from Josh Ingersoll. What are your thoughts on improving education / solving our teacher shortage? Great question, Josh.
Well, first and foremost, I want to put service back in conservative. I think public service is really important. What I get frustrated with as a county executive, and I did as school board president, is when people who are more bureaucratic and sometimes in a deep union mentality, they start to focus on things that aren't about kids or aren't about delivering service to people or communities instead of about themselves or about benefits or something like that. There's too much of that, and I think that's a problem. But we have a lot of really good teachers in the state, public school, parochial school, private school. And the same thing is true in a number of our local governments. I think we really need to invigorate people to want to serve, whether it's as a teacher, a full-time type of a job, or whether it's a volunteer firefighter. We need that out of folks. So I think I think you got to change the narrative for one thing. I think, making sure people know, like, we value and respect our teachers and public servants, and we're not going to put up with government programs that and government bureaucracies that aren't serving the people well. I mean, you look at some of the stuff that comes down from the federal government or the state government. For example, the DPI's new adjusted standards that lowers the bar for kids. I mean, I can't believe that the education governor, vetoed the bill that would have. It's remarkable. I know public school teachers that are like furious about this, and of course they can't say anything. So I do feel really strongly it's important to emphasize public service and to put the focus back where it belongs, on our kids and around the people.
Are there current policies, or if you were, when you are the governor, what are your first three priorities? Like right away, this is the direction I want to give, whether it's through executive orders or whether it's direction to legislature or the Republican Party. This is what I want to see on my desk. What are those three things going to be?
Yeah, well, remember, one of the very first things for any new governor is the state budget, which is a big deal. And if you look at the current budget that Governor Evers proposed, a 20% increase in spending at the state level, I don't know anybody who's asking for that. 1,000 new bureaucrats, absolutely nobody is asking for that. So that state budget's going to be really important. But here's something I mentioned earlier. I think a state where our kids want to be, a state where our retirees can afford to be, that is really important to me. I think one of the big hurdles to that for our kids is housing, right? Buying a home right now is incredibly difficult, especially with all the other increasing expenses that we're feeling still from Bidenflation and the economy that we experienced over the last 4 years. So helping to give opportunities for home ownership is really important. If our kids can't find a place to live, they're not going to be able to live here anyway. equally important is our income tax. It's embarrassing the fact that the state of Illinois has a lower income tax than Wisconsin. I think we need to lower that. Illinois' got a flat income tax. We need to get it lower. We need to flatten it and then put it on a trajectory to eliminating it. I think also putting as much local control as possible, getting government as close to the people as it can be is super important. So those are some of the things that I really want to see changing. And again, the devil's in the detail. It'll all be a matter of negotiation, but we're going to be talking to each other and working through those things, and not sitting off in our ivory towers. That's just not how it's going to work. We've got to get focused on the people. We're doing their work.
Well, we'll assume for a moment there's probably going to be a primary. You're probably not going to be the only Republican that's going to be running. So sticking kind of on that, like what would separate you, even though you don't even know your opponents, but I mean, go through all the talking points, all the bullet points of I'm a Republican, therefore you know this about me already. I'm probably going to be pro-life. I'm probably going to be all these things you can kind of go through. Is there anything that you don't necessarily align with in terms of the Republican Party that maybe you have a different view on, that your primary opponents would?
Well, I think one of the things you're starting to see is these early announcements are becoming the new norm. It's not just here in Wisconsin that it's happening. John James over in Michigan has announced, Vivek Ramaswamy in Ohio, Byron Daniels in Florida. All of those announcements are coming. Now, Kim Reynolds in Iowa just announced she's not running, so I'm sure you'll hear candidates popping up there soon. The reality is these races have become such that you have to almost get out 18 months ahead of time, especially if you're not independently wealthy, although Vivek is doing just fine. There's, a guy like me, I'm not a multimillionaire, so I've got to get out and talk to people. I think I've beat that horse to death. But also, this is probably a $30 million race just for the candidate. So I've also got to raise money. What you're going to find about me, and if you talk to people who are from Washington County or familiar with what I've done, is there will be no one who outworks me. As a high school wrestler, I learned fast and quick how to bust my tail in. Learned it again in basic training when they beat your head into the ground. Learned it again in Baghdad. And learned it when I ran for county executive. No one's going to outwork me. That's going to be my focus for the next 18 months, is getting to the grassroots, talking to people where they're at. And I think it's what's going to help us prevail by November of next year.
Well, by the way, again, thank you for your service. Your story, and I saw your video. That was just a great promotional video that you put out yesterday. That was excellent. But
it was my story. It's a true story.
Seriously, it was really, really good. But so going back to the differences between you and other Republicans. So there's we'll stick with like the big topics, right? We'll start with abortion. I think right now it's I think it's legal, but up to 20 weeks, I think right now. If you were the governor, are you satisfied with that? Are you like, okay, that's perfectly fine, or I want to see something different come to my desk?
So there's an injunction from the courts right now that has it at 20 weeks. So that's what you're talking about.
Okay.
And the injunction is related to the Supreme Court case that is related to the 1849 law that's been debated so much. So, we certainly have to wait and see what happens with that until what's next. But I really believe this is a referendum issue. This is a decision that the people of the state of Wisconsin have to make. There will certainly be intense negotiations around what does that referendum question look like, if that's what it comes to. But first, we've got to see what happens with the Supreme Court race, and I don't want to get out in front of that.
Well, so I feel like that was an answer-ish. Not really, but kind of. I mean, you're totally...
My wife and I have had this conversation, obviously. We have two boys, almost 20 at UW La Crosse and 17 at Kettle Moraine Lutheran High School. And that's just not a choice we would make. But I recognize that, there's the heavenly kingdom where everything's perfect, and then there's earth. And so I'm informed by my faith. But it's hard to interpret until you know exactly what the Supreme Court's going to do, where to go from here.
I think Brad Schimmel said that, he was pro-life, but he understands that he doesn't believe that's necessarily the will of Wisconsin. Or the wishes of Wisconsin. Now, he was obviously talking Supreme Court race, going, listen, I don't make those decisions. I'm not a legislator. When he was running for Supreme Court. So, yeah, there's always that that I think we brought up a little bit earlier about how do you make a decision when it kind of goes against what you personally believe, but at the same time, like, yes, but this actually is what everybody else wants, and maybe it's something that we should do. Pick anything random, like should we? How horrible is alcohol? How many deaths? How many contributing factors does alcohol have in so many other bad things? Sure, maybe it's bad, but would you actually vote to get rid of it? Our economy would go in the dump in a second. I mean, so it's not like what. So you have to kind of separate what do I personally believe with okay, this is what it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, yes. My mother is a twin. My mom and my godmother aunt, they were adopted, and at birth, and that was I'm sure a very difficult situation for my maternal grandmother, who it was a sudden thing, and I am just really grateful that obviously she was born or I wouldn't be
Yeah,
here.
right.
But that decision for her, I can't even imagine what it was like. She's since passed recently, but it's a very emotional issue. It's a very passionate issue.
Sure.
And of course, the other side, this is the number one issue. All things were predicated on that issue. But in the end, it is something that when we wait and see what the Supreme Court does, I think it's going to help inform how do you proceed from here.
Sure. Marijuana, where are you on that? Legalizing it for medicinal or recreational, or is that another one? Leave it up to the people.
I do think that's a worthy discussion to leave it up to the people, but here's something that's important to understand, and I think gets lost in this conversation. I get frustrated about it. So if you look around the state of Wisconsin, pretty much every state around us, including Iowa, has some level of legalization. Um, our at least in Washington County, that it's being able to tell the difference now between what's been legalized with can't well what's been legalized already with hemp as compared to marijuana.
Mhm.
They can't even tell the difference, and by the time they do, things are too late. So I've been walking in a couple of parades where it's very obvious to me that people are smoking marijuana close to me, and not just one or two, but dozens and dozens, and cops are walking up and down, and it's happening in real time. I mean, to be honest with you, I think the issue of whether it should or should not be legalized is past us. The question is, how best do we regulate it? Well,
Mhm.
I'm really frustrated with the federal level on this one, because until they set a standard, you've got this hodgepodge of Illinois allows this, but Iowa allows this other thing, and Minnesota is different. Here's something that's really fascinating. About 6 years ago, when I was running for county executive the first time, I went and visited a bunch of psychiatrists in the area. These are people who generally lean left, and they were telling me about how bad it is. They're literally saying, "Josh, you need to do something to get marijuana under control." I'm like, "What? What do you mean?" They're like, "Yes, it's got to be legal, or we've got to change the laws." I'm like, "What are you talking about? That's not a very liberal thing to say." And they're like, "No, the problem is the doses of THC are so high that it's actually destabilizing people, and they're becoming addicted. It's not the ditchweed of the 1960s anymore. This stuff is really, really dangerous. And of course, the gummies and all of that stuff, people are almost overdosing. So they were really concerned. I think the fact that we have zero, basically at this point, a free for all, because you've got all these different standards in all of these different states is wildly problematic. And honestly, I think the people of Wisconsin have spoken pretty loudly and clearly. They want some level of legalization. They want it regulated. Again, I think you gotta work through it. But this is an issue where I don't think either side is talking to one another either. The proposal that came out last year, I think it was, that would have had government
Yeah, like
dispensaries.
five
I'm
different
not sure.
dispensaries or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
I'm not sure that's the solution. I didn't study the bill, but I'm not big into the government doing that kind of stuff. But the point being, I think there's an acknowledgement amongst our legislative members that something's got to change. Because if you could just drive up the road and into Marquette, Michigan, or drive down to Chicago, or drive over to Minneapolis and get your weed fix, obviously people are bringing it across the lines, and it puts law enforcement in a really bad situation.
Yeah. The election in April, a lot of people
Hmm.
did kind of anticipate Brad Schimel losing, but not by that much, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that was a whooping, right? And I like Brad, I
it
really do.
was.
I'm just
It
saying
was.
that's just a fact.
Yeah, it
But
was.
if you look at the November election, Donald Trump obviously he won. But if you actually look down ticket, Republicans didn't do super well. Even Eric Hovde lost in that race, and again further down the ticket, they didn't do as well. And it seems as though unless Donald Trump in the last like 8, 10 years, whatever, unless he's on the ticket, Republicans don't do as well. Then we saw, of course, what happened in the April nonpartisan election. Whatever, it's partisan. Uh, is this concerning you at all? That who's going to be turning out? I mean, Wisconsin is it's a purple state, but barely. It's kind of, if you take Trump out of the equation, it's really kind of almost becoming more of a blue state. Are you concerned about that at all? How are you going to reach the independents and even those on the left?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen Governor Walker actually talk about this, that Wisconsin historically actually is a blue state, and his when he won in 2010, bucked that trend, and of course the Tea Party revolution helped that as well. But generally speaking, we've tended to lean left with our progressive history. So.
Mhm.
I think that that's right. But, I think President Trump has taught us something that's really important. And that is similar to my conversation or commentary earlier about Ronald Reagan and fighting for freedom and the American dream. Donald Trump has taught us that same lesson. You need to fight, fight, fight. And the bottom line is, like you mentioned with April elections, I mean, they're partisan, right? I mean,
Yeah.
become very obvious. Their side's getting multi-million-dollar donations from George Soros
Yeah.
and the governor of Illinois, and our side got donations from Elon. But we don't. The problem, I think, in that race, in part, was we act like we're going to be above the fray, and no, it's not partisan. And well, I mean, come on, you got you got to be willing to fight. Again, I'm the son of a Lutheran minister, Wisconsin nice, but there's a way to. I think Scripture says pile burning coals on their heads
Mm.
to prove the point. That's a different kind of way to fight. I'm not a New York brawler, but I do think we have to be serious about how we bring the fight and what it looks like, and picking issues that we know that people really care about. So a really good example of that is overwhelmingly election integrity is something people want to see.
Mm.
They don't want to see Milwaukee and Madison have basically 24/7 voting ability for the 2 weeks leading up to the election through in-person absentee balloting, while places up in your neck of the woods or even in the northern part of Washington County, you have to schedule an appointment with your town clerk. I mean, that's not fair.
Mm-mm.
They want to see the voter rolls actually purged on time. Just so you know, I'm the only clerk in Wisconsin, I think in Wisconsin history, but back in 2012, I'm certainly the only one who actually forced the Government Accountability Board to let me purge the voting roll list. I think it's an important step in the process that we have to take. Washington County has a whole election integrity package that I think has really changed the narrative, and I think it's something that should be extended all across the state of Wisconsin. But at the end of the day, those are the types of things that I think we as conservatives need to fight, fight, fight. The election rules are what they are right now. We've got to play within the rules, and as President Trump told us, fight for them each and every day.
So if you look at the Supreme Court race and the money that went into that, which is extraordinary. I don't know if this is going to be a very expensive race, obviously, for the governor in Wisconsin next year. What are your thoughts about, let's say, an Elon Musk type? Again, they don't give the money to you, right? It's they are just kind of advocating for you in that scenario. Is it like, hey, that's good, money's always good and advertising's good, but dang it, I kind of saw how this thing went, and there's a lot of people who it kind of almost turned it into like it was Susan Crawford versus Elon Musk. Like those are the two people that were actually running. Are you concerned about that at all? Would you take that money? And not, again, it doesn't go to you, but would you be happy with this stuff? Or is it, I kind of hope we don't get the big amounts like that because it could completely take away from my messaging.
So I think this is exactly the type of thing I was just talking about a minute ago with knowing how to fight and being smart about how you fight. You don't walk into a heavyweight match and throw an uppercut immediately. You got to be more strategic about it. Like again, we didn't spend any time talking about how George Soros and J.B. Pritzker are donating millions and millions of dollars to
Mm-mm.
the state Democrat Party. Instead, we allowed the narrative to define us, and then of course brought Elon to the state, which probably didn't help the cause. And that was one of the top two issues for the
Yeah.
Democrats was that their literal hate, disdain for Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
Yep.
So I think yes is the answer. I mean, if Elon's going to donate money to the state party, this is why having a strong state party with all of us rowing in the same direction is critically important. What the Democrats have done, what Ben Wickler has done fundraising on that side, I mean, you got to give it up to them. They've raised a lot of money. I'm told over and over and over again, I've got to raise $30 million as the candidate bottom line, kind of basement level, in order to be competitive. I mean, that's an insane amount of money. This is probably going to be close to a $250 million race, all spending from all sides. It's just mind numbing. But because of that, we can't play on a different playing field compared to what the Democrats are. So you've got to even the playing field, and you got to be willing to go all across the country because, Wisconsin has been the focus of elections
Yeah.
nationwide for a long time. And we gotta start fighting that way.
What kind of who are you trying to, or who are you hoping is going to endorse your campaign? Whether it's an organization, a group, a person, etc.
You, and I don't mean you, Ben. I mean
I
you,
say,
the listener.
well, you need
The,
$30
the
million
people.
dollars. I was just looking at the wallet over there, and I've got $18 right now. So I mean, I can help you out a little, but that's not going to probably get you to 30 million very fast.
Yeah. No, I mean, to me, this is an all-in approach. We've got to talk to people all across the state individually. And like I mentioned earlier, there certainly the things that will be important to me are supporting law enforcement. Looking at the memo that Evers' administration just put out a week or two ago, essentially directing staff to not cooperate with federal
Yeah.
law enforcement, ICE, without bringing your attorney along. I mean, it's embarrassing. When I'm governor, that is the kind of thing that stops on day one. Like, we're going to cooperate with law enforcement, local, state, federal. We're going to cooperate with the federal government to make sure that funding is going to our kids and the schools where it belongs for reading, writing, and math. That's the kind of stuff that I think we need to change, and I will change when we're in Madison.
When did you first start thinking about running for governor?
Most seriously after the Trump bus tour last fall. I was on that in September. I did. I think my first stop was in Altoona, and I think I did 8 out of the 10 stops on that tour. And I had a blast. I went in kind of not knowing what it was all about, and I think nobody knew who I was. I started off kind of the last guy, like, oh yeah, we got to put this guy out there too. He was
Yeah.
invited, and by the end, I was right at the beginning, getting everybody fired up for all the rest of the speakers. And pretty soon, it didn't take long, and I was getting people coming up to me and being like, "Oh man, with Tim Lycos losing, you need to seriously think about running." And it started to get overwhelming, where I'd have people literally touching me and praying over me, and to the point where I was like, man, something's happening. And I really just feel like it was the Lord calling me through His people to do this work and to run. And then I helped Brad Schimmel a lot. January through March, I think I did 25 different stops across all 4 corners of the state.
Well, apparently it
And
didn't help.
well, I don't know if it didn't help, but it didn't. But
Yeah.
again, it was the same thing. I'd have people come up and like grab me by the shoulders and like, Josh, you need to do this.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, you get anybody doing something stuff like that to you, and it really moves you, literally and figuratively, and that's what really prompted me to start seriously thinking about it, putting the pieces in place, and ultimately making the announcement yesterday.
So when you had this conversation with your wife,
Yeah.
Was it, I don't know, I'm thinking about running for governor. What was her first reaction? The first time you ever brought it up to her, what did she say?
I think she laughed initially. Uh, so we've been married since we were 19. We've known each other since we were like 12 years old.
Oh,
And when you're married that young, like I was in a situation where I asked her dad for her hand,
boy.
old school. Yeah, exactly. And he's like, you're 19. Are you sure you're going to be able to take care of her? She's expensive. Um, uh,
Love it.
turns out she's a thrifter. She's a Goodwill shopper, so that
Yeah.
saved me. But nonetheless, I then dropped out of school, went to get a job because I took that seriously from him, and ended up joining the Guard. And so that whole being married that young, I think she just rolls with the punches.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah, she was a little bit surprised. But we've had some really good conversations, obviously, over the last 9 months, not just with her, but also with my sons and my oldest son's girlfriend, who likely will be his fiance soon. And just prayed about it a
Wait, hold on
lot.
a second. Hopefully she's not watching. Does she know
Oh
that,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
is
yeah,
she
yeah.
likely,
I mean, she told me.
oh, okay.
He might not know.
Oh,
No,
okay.
no, I'm
Uh,
kidding. They definitely both
what
are
conversations you must
fine.
have, so I'm a son of a sheriff, and
Oh yeah,
and my my mom basically is being a wife of a sheriff for 28 years. It's a family investment.
it
And there
is.
were things that, if I found out somebody right now was going to run for sheriff, first thing I would ask them is, well, talk to your family and talk to your kids. What conversation have you had with your kids about this? Like, what should they expect? Because you run for governor, holy cow. I mean, you're not
Yeah,
in your Washington County, which I think is a pretty red county,
yeah.
and kind of that safety net there, the support. Now, all of a sudden, you're going to be on a state stage and in some ways even a national stage for this, which means there's going to be lots of vitriol. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's coming your way. What conversations have you had with your sons?
Delete your social media apps. No,
Really?
I
Did
mean,
you?
I did actually a long time ago. It's not that I don't have social media; it's just that I don't have the apps because I can't all the
Sure.
constant dinging of
Yeah.
the messaging. But that, yes, I mean that's a big part of it. Is like you can't focus on the comments, you can't get stuck on the trolls. People want to bring you down. It's just the nature of the work, no matter what. So we have had those conversations with them. My kids are great. My wife is amazing. I'm so blessed to have all of them in my life, and they were a major part of our announcement yesterday. My wife gave this incredible speech that I couldn't even make eye contact with her because I would have just completely lost it.
Wow.
She did amazing, and my both of my sons actually sang songs. My youngest son let everybody in roll out the barrel. Yes, there was it was like a sporting event, and then it did the pledge, and then my oldest son sang "America the Beautiful." They're all in. They've been with me every step of the way from the first run as county executive, and all the way to reelection, and now in this. They get it, and we lead with our faith. Let our light shine, and then try to love our neighbors. That's what it's all about.
Loving that's huge in so many
Yeah,
ways. If people
yeah.
understand that, it's not just that. Okay, that's a whole other thing. So my
Well,
my
that's not a whole other thing for me. It's
like
really the
that's
definition of my life. It's who I am, and
yeah.
what the theme of my speech was. And honestly, if you look back at what I've done in 5 years in Washington County, it's been a major theme of how I've led Washington County, especially through COVID, but all 5 years.
So going back to the original question at the very beginning,
Yeah,
why should we hire you? Why governor?
it's
So people are just joining this now.
yeah.
Why? What about you?
Well, It, I represent, I believe, the next generation of leadership that has a forward vision for this state of having our kids come home and our retirees want to be here, and really resetting the table, just like I think President Trump is doing right now with this economy. Look, you don't have to be a historian to know that the greatest generation, those World War II vets, gave us, one of the greatest gifts in world history. Uh, which result, after a generation of war, they gave us multiple generations of peace, almost endless prosperity, endless population growth, endless opportunity. And I think we all know, if you look at the next 50 years, it's not going to be quite the same. And those changes are beginning to happen globally. Wisconsin has an opportunity to position itself. We've been a leader in this country many times before in a multitude of ways. We can be again. But here's something I think is really important. About 15 years ago, there was a young county executive who was the son of a minister who ran for governor and did pretty darn well. And about when I was a kid, there was another young conservative who was very energetic and beat a Tony to become governor. And you have a chance to do it again. This is an opportunity to put the power back to the people at the most local level possible, and get the focus back on the people where it belongs. That's who I am. I live by love your neighbor, and that's what we're going to do.
Josh, thanks so much for coming on. You got to come
Thanks
back
for having
and
me
give
on.
us an update in the future. Special thank you to Washington County Executive and candidate for Wisconsin Governor Josh Schoemann for taking the time to come on for a chat with us today. I'll see all of you back here tomorrow morning when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be discussing his career change. Big story. Fitzy, maybe no longer the sheriff? What? That'll be tomorrow morning on a Positive Tuesday Ben and Fitzy show. So until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.